Hello and welcome back to this week's non-sponsored therapy session, which no better help yet, but we're still working on it. This is the Oh No 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 podcast, of course. I'm your host this evening, Robbie Weir, and we are in an evening after where it's yet again Rovers make a difficult afternoon for themselves, going 2-0 down in a home league game, fighting back in the second half. Before ultimately falling short against Arbroath. As I say, I'm your host this evening, Robbie Weir. I'm joined firstly by Duncan Cameron. How are you getting on, Duncan?
I'm okay, mate. I'm okay. My Sunday, was it Sunday evening now? I had nipped round to my mates for half an hour, helping out with a wee DIY thing that turned into like a 6-hour saga. So that's really helped my mood after yesterday. So
really expecting you just to say it turned into a 6-hour sesh, to be honest. But
listen, that would have been a much better way to spend the time.
Yeah,
I think a big boy's going to come round and fix the damage that we've done. So we'll be fine then.
Fair play. Yeah, I no elaborate intros for this one. We're going straight into it. And also joining me, Blair Hopcroft. How are you getting on, Blair?
Oh, I'm doing like the weather, mate. Yeah, I left Starks Park yesterday on the final whistle and headed up to the Fife Ice Arena to see a rare Flyers win, and thought that's fine. That cancels out my weekend. Like I'm an aggregate win over the two, and we've just sat and watched the stream for Nottingham and watched them getting absolutely pumped 7-4. So yeah, I'm back to where I was at 5 o'clock yesterday.
Yeah, if you're in the East Lothian region and you see a car swerving about the road, that's just John Greer reaching this point in the podcast, raging about the mention of ice hockey. But we'll move forward. So yeah, pre-match against Arbroath, the lineup comes out at 2 o'clock, and there's very little change to go off from Dougie Emery and the perspective player. The only one that we saw was Paul Insel coming out to be replaced by Paul McMullen. How much of a surprise was that, given how fluid we looked against Queen of the South in the second half of that game with the changes that had been made?
Like, I don't know why to start on a total negative, but I was really annoyed. I have to be totally honest about it. I was really annoyed, and the football that followed did not make me feel any better about that decision. I don't see how, like, that game on Tuesday night, the first hour we were pedestrian. We weren't very good. We weren't terrible, like moving the ball about and stuff, but just kind of slow and no really kind of at it. Just no movement, no kind of fluidity in certainly that final third. And then he makes the changes on Tuesday night, brings the young boys on, and brings Josh Mullin on. Doesn't quite qualify as a young boy. And it just changed. We were dynamic. The movement was good. The gaps were opening up. Chances galore. I mean, don't get me wrong, still couldn't score for love nor money, but like chances galore. So I'm thinking, at 1:45, I'm really interested to see what's going to happen with this team sheet when it comes out, because he's got to make changes. He's got to look at what happened in that last half an hour and make changes. And he just didn't. I mean, the one change that he made was effectively just the kind of change that was made during the week anyway. It was just a kind of a shuffling of the pack more than anything else to get Hanlon in and get Doherty kind of forward. But honestly, like, really disappointed. And like I say, just it didn't, nothing that happened in that first half kind of changed my mood on that. Like, it's just it felt, I mean, we'll obviously get to the goals and all the rest of it, but at half time it felt really, really self-inflicted. Really self-inflicted.
And for you, Duncan, do you think maybe that comes down to Dougie Emery being in a different point, that he's came into the club in the sense that he's still, I mean, he's seen a lot of the players had plenty of games as a manager now with the Rovers squad. I don't think it's any surprises with the roles that the players are doing, but still maybe one last roll of the dice in terms of a few individuals within there. And also a word for the brief potential excitement that got quickly dampened out about seeing a certain number 10 hanging up in the changing room.
Yeah, aye, that's that awful behaviour. Getting more hopes up like that, outrageous. And it was that there was maybe about a 10-minute spell, certainly as far as we were concerned, where it's like, there's a number 10 jersey. There's number 10 shorts. Like, Vonnie must be there. So hang on a second. There's Lewis Stevenson's kit's up there. He's definitely still out. Kind of took the buzz away a wee bit. In terms of the players who did play and certainly who started, I'm going to sort of admit to this. At kick-off, I wasn't as kind of disgruntled as maybe a lot of other people were. I think, and now to be fair, the events of the first half proved me wrong, and I can't really say much about that. But I'm not totally sold on 20 minutes against a shattered Queen of the South team playing in a thunderstorm is necessarily like, this is the way to go. These guys are amazing, particularly given that we didn't, as you say, actually score a goal, or we didn't look brilliant, but we did look better than we had before. So I wasn't overly bothered by that. I wasn't, thinking that this is a disgrace how what's happening here. But yes, I agree with the sort of premise of your question. Actually, I think Dougie Imrie having come in, I think there is an element of you come in as a new manager and you have to really, I think, go, right, listen, clean slate. It's a fresh break. Some of you guys have been out of form. Some of you guys have been out of the team. But ultimately, I'm here new. You can all take it as the chance to impress. And we've seen some guys like J. Rowe, where there's been a total sea change. He was almost out of the picture. Now he's been back in the picture. What the picture looks like is something I think we'll discuss over the course of the next hour. But listen, let's not dance around it anymore. We're talking about Jack Hamilton in the main. You kind of come in to a job. I mean, you could, but it'd be very brave. You kind of come in and go, right, this football team effectively has one striker available at the moment and not play him. Like, it would be insane. It would be madness. But fairly quickly, it seems to have reached that point. Half-time yesterday, he takes his only striker off. There are other factors around that, like Andy Winter, that obviously we'll talk about as we go on. So, as I say, I wasn't particularly surprised to see that it was kind of the same. What I was slightly surprised by, and again, I think this is something I'll come back to as we go through some of the goals, was the exact kind of setup. So, bearing in mind there's the usual kind of variations, and you can interpret the same things in different ways sometimes. But to me, I would have said that this setup yesterday was a kind of 4-1-3-1-1, basically, right? So it's a flat back four, very straightforward. You then get Jordan Doherty on his own as a holding midfielder. Then a sort of attacking midfield three that was fairly narrow, where you've got McMullen on the right, Scott Brown in the middle, and then Andy Winter on the left. Dylan Easton seemed to then be in front of them in a kind of free role, where he was popping up all over the place, and then Jack Hamilton is obviously at the top as the striker. That, I don't think, worked particularly well either. And as I say, I'll come back to this as we go through it, but obviously there is logic behind it. Dougie Imrie has had a plan. I don't think that worked better than just playing a 4-2-3-1 would have done. Just pulling Scott Brown back a bit, pull Dylan Easton back a little bit, and actually just maybe keep things a little bit simpler. I think possibly maybe would have seen a little bit of a slight upturn in the kind of overall performance there, because I think you just get one too many kind of round pegs and square holes, I suppose.
See, just on that, just really quickly before we move on, I agree completely with the premise of what you're saying, that the formation was odd for me. There were times where I felt it was like a 4-4-2, because Brown quite often started beside Doherty, but then had this kind of license to move forward, and then would be kind of popping up, not quite in the 10, but maybe like a more advanced 8, like that kind of further forward.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I think that we would have benefited from exactly what you're saying. The only difference I would do is I wouldn't have pulled Easton back. I'd have kept him up top. I'd have gone 4-4-2. I'd have pulled Scott Brown back and sat him with Doherty. Even with a licence to still move on a little bit with Doherty's protection and he can sit in that kind of Sean Byrne role that we had before. But it's actually one of the best games Easton's had for a wee while, I think. And it was kind of the freedom to pop up wherever he wanted to pop up, really, that I thought kind of brought the best out of him. But I'm not really sure it worked for... Certainly didn't work for Jack, but it didn't work for many others either, to be fair.
On the collective, I fully agree with you. Because Easton, he was sort of popping up on the right, and then I think in terms of the initial forays into the game, Blair, just talk us through that, because there is this sort of Dylan Easton breaks through with the ball early on. There's a bit of a sort of maybe question of whether he could have played earlier, but I think the window was so small to play it through to Paul McMullen. It was always going to be a tight one to get away from McMullen's feet. He ends up playing it out to Wilson, who sort of puts in a ball. Jack Hamilton clips it wide. What did you make into the initial sort of forays into the game? And I mean, because there wasn't really any indication that Arbroath would be going in at half-time 2-0. It was quite limited on that front.
For me, I felt we were in control pretty much right up until they scored. Control's maybe a bit strong. I don't think we were kind of bossing the game as such, but I think we had the better of it. I was quite surprised by Arbroath, actually. I thought they were set up really weird, sat really deep, kind of waiting for us to kind of come onto them, and seemed to be going quite direct against two big strapping centre halves. It felt very much like what we used to do, like just lump the ball in and let the centre halves head the ball out. Certainly the first, I don't even know, and what time was the goal? 25 minutes or something. So first 20 minutes or so, it felt very much like we were kind of chipping away. Certainly the earliest part of the game was the best we saw of Wilson all day, really. He made a couple of breaks down the left, including that one, and put the ball across. Easton's in a really strange kind of place for me in terms of his form, because we're so reliant on him, so reliant on him. But he's also really frustrating, and some of the shouts we're getting for the South Stand for Easton are frustrating, I've got to be honest. But he's my only criticism of him, if I'm being totally blunt about it, is exactly what you're talking about, which is I think when he's not like at his top form and when he's not really playing with that swagger, he just holds onto the ball that little bit too long, and he just takes one or two touches too many at times. Not criminally, but when you've got a boy like Paul McMullen, and we saw it in the second half when he didn't do it and he released Josh Mullin for the second goal. When you've got a boy with pace, put the ball in front of him. Like, there's absolutely 0 point rolling the ball into Paul McMullen's feet in the 10. Even if he holds it up, what's he going to do with it? Not a huge amount. Maybe turn, maybe get a shot away from distance. Actually, where is he best? Slot him in behind, let him go on a foot race. Him and Tam O'Brien, every day of the week, get him in a foot race. Like, all day, every day. And it felt a wee bit laboured at times, and we were just a wee bit reluctant. It was kind of the same, the Airdrie game last week. It felt like a bit of a reluctance to take chances, and it was almost more, would rather keep possession in a safe place than lose the ball taking a risk, kind of rolling the dice a little bit. And it kind of played out that way for that first half. But I mean, to be fair to that, again, that chance that you referred to, the ball in for Wilson's a really good ball. And actually, Jack Hamilton is the best bit of forward play we've seen of him probably all season, actually, to be fair. He makes the run and he gets a foot to it. Doesn't get it on target, but it kind of...
You need him to do that more.
Yeah, it set the tone, and you're going, oh, maybe this is part of the plan. Get the ball out wide, get the crosses in. Just didn't materialise.
So, Duncan, we reach the 20-minute point, and there's really that sort of first anxious moment in the back with the sort of defensive mix-up between Josh Ray and I think it might have been Darryl O'Connor at the point where they both sort of go for the ball. Did that really, for you, do you think that knocked the confidence in terms of what we were trying to do and the way, because it felt after that, it was almost like a snowball effect. It just kind of got worse and worse and worse across the first half.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. Is that the catalyst? Is that the trigger point? Or is that just the first evidence of something that was already there? I think it's the latter, personally. I don't think it was a case of like that happened and then suddenly there was panic. I think it's a symptom of what was already there, and like broadly, this is my sort of thesis point for this game. Really, I think it's too many guys having to think too hard. And I know that's a point I come back to quite a lot, and I don't mean it to be kind of disrespectful at all to anybody. But it's like when you've got guys who are just a wee bit out of position, or playing in the right position, but a wee bit out of their normal job, you're thinking too hard, and you're having to not act on instinct. And I think when you look across this team, and for this game, I think you've got probably 4 guys who I would say aren't sort of being used to their best necessarily. So Ewan Wilson, I think, is one, because he's being asked to provide all the width on the left-hand side. And like it or not, he's not comfortable going forward. He's not, like, good at it, in the sense that you get fullbacks who are really good at attacking and fullbacks who are really good at defending. He's not in the bracket of, he's a really good attacking fullback. He's just not. He's perfectly willing, as you say. He puts in that good ball for the Jack Hamilton chance, but it's not. He's not a guy. He's not the starting point of your plan. You go, right, let's play really narrow in the opposition's half, because Ewan's going to be bombing down the left hand side and causing loads of bother. So you're asking him to do that, but he's maybe not necessarily best suited to it. Andy Winter. Well, actually, tell you, let's park Andy Winter. We'll maybe come back to him, because I want to answer the question that you've asked me. But I think he's an interesting case, just in what we've seen from him in these couple of games so far. Scott Brown, I think, is too far forward to be kind of acting on his kind of natural point. And then Jordan Doherty, I think, is perfectly fine as a holding midfielder. But I don't get the feeling he's like, I don't think you're using him to his best, asking him to do it by himself effectively. Well, you're almost, what we were saying yesterday was, right, of the two of you, Brown is going forward, you are staying back. I think just having them, parallel, and then either one can go would have worked better. But if you get 4 of your 10 outfield players not necessarily kind of acting on instinct, I think that's where these little bits start to come in. And what you said there, Blair, about we didn't necessarily control the first 20 minutes, but it was almost like sort of very little happened in the first 20 minutes. But what did happen was the Rovers making something happen. But then these little errors and these little bits start to creep in. And I think we left ourselves, well, to be blunt, we don't score enough goals to be able to make mistakes at the back.
Yeah.
And there's no getting away from that. And I don't think the strategy, certainly on the evidence yesterday for the first half, created enough to sort of compensate for the sort of unease that it maybe caused coming back a little bit.
So we reach the first goal, Blair. With it starts out on the Arbroath right wing or left wing, with, I believe, a throw-in, and then the play switches over before the ball gets put into the box, and I think it was Paul Hanlon comes off slightly worse for wear in terms of the sort of attempted clearance, and it sits up nicely for Gavin Riley, who smashes the ball home. In terms of from the start point to the ball ending up in the net, whereabout do you think are the key moments of failure, or is it one of those ones where it's too many collective errors where you can sit and say one thing happened here, a second thing happened here, and it goes across the piece, or do you think there was a single point of failure with it?
I mean, I don't know about single point of failure. I think, and I even don't know if it's too many errors as in sort of big egregious ones. It just felt really scrappy. It just felt like we weren't kind of settled at that point. And it very much was the tale of between the two goals as well, actually, because it's like we lost all composure altogether. We started to kind of swing feet at stuff that didn't need it, and trying to dive into tackles that didn't need to be there. And I felt a wee bit sorry for Paul Hanlon in the sense that he'd want that back, I think. I mean, I think he's big enough to kind of take that in the chin. I think he'd want that back and he'd want to do better. I have to be honest again, and I don't want to fall into the territory of just singling out a player and he be the reason I'm kind of annoyed about things. But again, for me, Wilson is just pedestrian. He's watching. He's the one that's kind of, because it's coming from our right, their left. So he's looking across the back line. He can see Hanlon going to the ball, and he can see the striker right in front of him, basically on the penalty spot with nobody within 3 yards of him. Just didn't move. I don't understand it. And I know that's easy to say because it's happening. It's happening in real time. It's happening quickly. It's not like it's broken down and he's just stood and watched him. But he's got a touch.
Yeah. And
the ball's high, and the ball's come down, and then he's finished it. That whole kind of process of him scoring that goal wasn't like like we talked earlier in the season about the kind of the Barney Stewart goal against Dunfermline and stuff, where he makes the best of the ball, being in a position and gets a snapshot away, and it's quick and it happens before people have got a chance to set themselves and all the rest of it. I felt Wilson watched at that point, and for me, I'm not sure he necessarily gets to it. I'm not sure he necessarily covers it completely. I think he makes the striker's job a little bit harder for me if he just steps across. And Duncan's about to disagree with me.
No, I don't disagree with you. I do agree with you. I mean, maybe I think it's slightly.
It's harsh.
I think singling him out. I think singling him out is a little bit harsh because there are a lot of players out of position here. I mean, it starts off with J. Rowe and he's followed Ryan Dow. There's logic behind it, but J. Rowe is on the left wing here.
Yeah,
as this move starts off, and this I said I was going to come back to it. I'm coming back to it already. This, I think, is a symptom of that kind of one-man midfield. Scott Brown is beyond the play. And it means that Jordan Doherty doesn't know how to react to the fact that his right back has just ran right across his vision. Now, see, if you're playing in a two-man midfield, even if Scott Brown has gone beyond, if Jordan Doherty is the right of that too, see, as soon as Rowe goes, Doherty just drops back. It's something that they've done really well in the brief times we've seen them, like the first half at Firhill. It was great, because any time Rowe went beyond, Doherty was like, great, for the next 40 seconds, I'm a right back again.
Yeah.
And just slots back in. And I think in a 4-2-3-1, you've just got that kind of muscle memory of who's going where. But in this, you can see Doherty staying central. Like when the ball goes over the top, Scott Brown goes chasing it, and Dara O'Connor goes out.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want to commit because he knows he's a centre half. So you end up with Dara and Jordan are both kind of in the same kind of bit, and then Hanlon has to track his runner, so he ends up at the same point as well. And it means that at the point when the ball comes in, you could chuck a napkin over those three guys who are basically, even though Doherty's playing in the midfield, like our three sort of best defenders are all defending the same zone, quote unquote. And what it means is that Wilson is then kind of trying to work out, well, where the hell am I supposed to be? And so I agree with you that I don't think he's where he should be, but he's almost like the last in a chain of multiple people not knowing where they should be. And I almost have like increasing sympathy the further down you go. It's like a chain reaction. By the end, it's like, how are you supposed to know where you're supposed to be? And if that's I mean, the other thing is to give credit to Arbroath. Like, they're a very good side. They're very, very sharp. They're so, and it sounds dismissive, but like so hard-working. Like, because obviously they're also very good, but like a lot of that goal is just dig and effort, and it's the fact that Ryan Dow's like, kids, man, I'm going to just drag this right back 40 yards and see what space it creates, and it creates the goal in the end. And also, just yes, a very good finish from Gavin Riley.
Yeah, I think that's you've got to give Arbroath their credit for this game and the way that they played. I don't think that, I know that Dougie Emery was spoke quite a lot about it in his post-match interview, but it really is one where their work ethic, their determination, their ability to press as well, very impressive for a team that I know that a lot gets made about, and Dougie Emery was sort of saying this about it in the post-match, a lot made about their part-time status, but they came in, I think he's fully within his rights to be calling out how that they've outworked us, and the way that they did. Their pressing was sensational. On the opposite side there, Duncan, I'll stick with yourself because you mentioned him earlier on. Half an hour in, Dylan Easton slides a sort of through ball through to Jack Hamilton. And I think it's the kind of point where you could hear the sort of collective in the stand, the sort of groan that we come to know, is the ball gets played into Jack Hamilton. He takes a sort of, controls it, brings it, it's going wide, so he's not going to go one-on-one like Josh Mullin got later on in the game. But then he sort of bears down towards the goal. I think he takes 3 or 4 touches, and then Tam O'Brien dispossesses him. Just in terms of you, what did you make of that, just in terms of the where it started, where it ended up, just the overall afternoon? Because again, we're going to have to talk about it, and I think that is you can't sort of go through a podcast like this without, you don't want to single players out, you don't want to brutalise them, but at the same time you do have to be transparent if you're going to be talking about a game of football.
Yeah, it's the elephant in the room, and I mean the chance you're talking about ends up being so little of a chance, it's not even in the highlights. You very graciously dug it out of the full match replay for us to get a good look at it. I don't think it's in the highlights, is it?
No, it wouldn't.
No, I didn't think so. Like, it's really difficult. It's really difficult to know quite what to say, actually, if I'm honest, because I can hear my mother's voice in my head saying, listen, if you can't say anything nice, say nothing at all. And nothing at all is all I've got left at this point, because, like, 22 games into the season now, I think Jack Hamilton is featured in all of them. He came off the bench a couple at the beginning. It's a big enough body of evidence that we have sailed through unlucky. I think we've sailed through bad patch as well. And you start to run into, I'd say, really quite unkind stuff. But, like,
yeah,
that chance, if you want to call it that, like, so he's played through on the left-hand side of the box, as you say. He's running wide. I don't know that he necessarily, if he has a shot first time, he's going to be on his weak foot in a narrow angle, shooting across goal, right? So I've criticised Jack Hamilton before for not shooting enough. I'm not going to do that on this occasion. But what he does do is he kind of goes beyond the ball and controls it with his right foot, and basically just shows Tam O'Brien the ball. And Tam O'Brien doesn't dive in, so he does it again. Just takes another touch. And it's like, it's so, I mean, it's borderline distressing to watch, because nobody's going to feel worse than that than Jack Hamilton. I'm absolutely sure. But it's it's so far combined with this whole body of evidence. 22 games. Honestly, it's so far off championship standard. There's no other way to put it. I think there's 19 players in the division that have scored more goals than Jack Hamilton. And he's played effectively the entire season up front as a number 9 in a team that's half decent. The team that's mid-table. And when you start going through and you just look at Gavin O'Reilly, up front, other end for Arbroath, hasn't been amazing, hasn't always been guaranteed a starting place in that Arbroath team. That was his 4th goal on Saturday. In roughly about 2/3 of the minutes that Jack Hamilton's had. Scott Robinson's been at Arbroath about 15 minutes and he's got 1/3 of the goals. And it's the 3 goals or more for the championship, which is the bracket that Jack Hamilton's in. There's 26 players in that, and it's 4 or 5 number 9s who play every week, and then just 20 guys who are just chipping in for their team. And it's not a phrase I like saying. I find that it sounds very entitled coming from a supporter, but it's not good enough. You can't get away from that, and that's not that's not a judgment. That's a fact. You can't play up front at any level. If you were playing Sunday League and you were 22 games into the season, and the boy that was playing up front every single week had 3 goals, you'd be going, "Come on, man! You need to be chipping in here." And to go back to the point you made at the start, Robbie, it very much so. I mean, at halftime, that feels like that's Dougie Emery going, "Right, this is now untenable, effectively.
Yeah.
I am now removing you from this side, despite the fact I do not have a replacement." He then says, in his post-match, "I don't think there's any other way to read this." He says, maybe people are coasting because they see that there's nobody behind them. I don't think there's any way to read that other than as a criticism of Jack Hamilton. And that's actually not language I would use. I don't think he's coasting. I actually think he's trying very hard, and ultimately, for whatever reason, it's just not there. And at that point, I start to have sympathy for him, because as we've said a lot this season, you need to be able to bring the guy out the firing line. But when you look at where we are in the league, we're 4 points off the playoffs. When you look at the games we've lost and the games that we've drawn, a lot of the games we've lost are by a single goal. 2 of the ones that we've lost by 2 goals were kind of last-minute breakaways. One against St Johnstone, one against Ross County. So if you said, right, actually, you know what? You've got a striker who, instead of scoring 3 goals, has scored 9 goals. Which would be good, not great, for 22 games in a season. We're probably at least 6 points better off for those 9 goals, and we'd be in a playoff place. And it's you can't get away from that. And nothing would please me more than for Jack Hamilton to be the guy who'd got those goals for us. But you cannot deny the hard facts for too long.
Blair, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, is there a duty of care there in terms of the player as well to sort of? I know that we've spoken about taking them out the firing line and sort of the and how difficult do you think it is, given that again we've obviously seen the performances, we've watched it, we know the sort of stats that Duncan's gone into. I'm sure that he'd argue that there's a few mitigating factors within there, but do you feel is it one where, look, we've had I think there's been sort of a few instances where you look and you think, okay, well, he's just came back from an injury, or the manager, maybe the way that we're playing's not been the best, or we've got a new manager in, he's going to be the one that's going to turn it around. Do you think it becomes more and more difficult the longer that it goes on, in terms of the sort of circumstances where a lot of supporters, like, we're a podcast, we're Rovers fans, and we want the best for the players and we want to support them as much as possible. I don't think anyone on this podcast goes out maliciously by any stretch of the imagination, but also at the same time you do need to be transparent, because ultimately there's no point in doing this if you're not. What's your sort of perspective on the whole thing, in sort of that instance?
Oh, look, I agree completely with what Duncan's saying, and I agree with what you're saying as well, Robbie, about, I didn't start doing this podcast to start slagging off players left, right and centre, and I know that some folk will call for us to do that, and that's absolutely fine, but I'm also not going to sit here and say one thing and then when I'm sitting in the pub with my mates say something completely different. I mean, I might tone it down a little bit for the viewers, but it's no good enough. It just isn't good enough anymore. And I think actually if we go back to a phrase that Duncan uses quite a lot, and I really like it, is body of evidence. And I think we're at the stage now with Jack Hamilton where the body of evidence of Jack Hamilton's career is that the really high point, that really good spell at Arbroath, is now the outlier. It's not, this isn't the outlier anymore. This isn't, but we've seen he can do it before, and why are we not getting that tune out of him, and how are we no? Nah, sorry. And that's not to write him off. I mean, Kevin Nisbet was probably in exactly the same position before he came to us and kicked on and has gone on to do, I mean, he's gone on to Scotland caps, and do you know what I mean? Like, has gone on to great things. Sometimes in a career it just doesn't work for whatever reason. Where you are, you need somebody different, something different, whatever it happens to be, whether it be teammates, whether it be managers, just whatever. I don't even know. But we've got to be really honest about it. We've got to be really upfront about it. It's not working. He's no scoring enough goals. And for me, I've actually, one of my really good mates he's been kind of going on the same point for a few weeks. And I've been kind of going, maybe I'm not really sure. But his working thesis is that we play worse when Jack Hamilton's in the team. Not necessarily through a direct fault of Jack Hamilton, but we as a collective 11 don't play as well when he's on the pitch as what we do when he's not on the pitch at the moment. And I think, and Duncan's absolutely right, I know it was against a tired Queen of the South Sea team on Tuesday night and whatever. That's what that 30 minutes at the end of the game certainly led us to. The second half on Saturday, 100% led us to that. For me, and I know we've not even gotten to the second half yet, so we'll get to the goals and stuff. But my overwhelming feeling is I'm not sure we score either of those goals if Jack Hamilton's on the pitch. And that's not a direct criticism of him. It is more the lack of movement and the lack of kind of fluidity in that final third. That goal, the two goals on Saturday, both came for me from like Chin making the run across, dragging a defender with him. Somebody just creating a space, creating a gap, just being hard to defend against. Like, I genuinely, forgive me, I can't remember who said it, but somebody put a point in the group chat we were talking about that there's no centre half in the Championship is waking up on a Saturday morning and thinking, oh, nah, Jack Hamilton this afternoon, like, I'm going to have a torrid afternoon. I honestly don't think anybody's thinking that. And I think we do have to take him out the firing line. I don't think it's a case of completely writing him off. I think he there's nothing to say that he can't, come off the bench a couple of times and score a couple of goals and find that wee vein of form again, and it could happen for him. I'm absolutely not writing him off, but for me, there is not a world in where he should be starting on Saturday.
When you get into it, sorry, Robbie, I know you've not had a chance on that shit, but just there's no, all the stuff that we've said prior to this point has just fallen by the wayside. Where it's like, if you could get crosses into him, 22 games into the season, he's had crosses. And it's like, we talked
40
about
of them at Queen's Park.
Yeah, 56. If you can, if you get the ball get the ball at his feet in the box, 6 yards out, he'll score goals. It's like, well, aye, 2 of them, and also so would anybody. With the greatest, I don't want to be going over the top on this, but that's such a bare minimum. Because this is the thing: is he scored 3 goals this season. One's a header. 2 of them, I think, have been run in. within the 6-yard box, basically.
Yeah.
Like, and he's not offering enough outside of that. And this, I think, is the point where it kind of forces us in. Not forces us in, but you naturally default to a certain way of playing when you've got a big number 9. And none of it's helping. And I think this is the point that your mate's getting at, Blair, where, like, when we think about the good stuff that Jack Hamilton does, and we've been praising him for it recently, where it's like winning his flick-ons or chesting the ball down to people, it's 35 yards out. Which means that the game is taking place 35 yards from the opposition's goal. So it's like, yeah, well done. You've managed to chest that down to somebody really well, like really good technical ability to bring that down. Or you've managed to flick the ball on. But you're the furthest man forward. So our attack is starting 35 yards out from goal. So we've still got loads to do. And it's like, he's got 1 assist for the season. I think it was the first goal against Ross County. Kind of nods it down to Scott Brown. And that's good. It's good ability. We talked about it. We praised him for it. But that's 1 assist in 22 games. Like, there's no getting away from it. And it makes everybody else's job harder as well. Because the likes of Dylan Easton and Paul McMullen, like, Paul McMullen's been getting a lot of stick as well. And I have a little bit more to kind of offer in defence of Paul McMullen. It feels to me like Paul McMullen's trying stuff and it's not coming off. And sometimes, and this is maybe just shifting the blame all onto one kind of scapegoat, but sometimes some of the stuff he tries, and I think if there was an on-form striker in the box, that could have turned into something. And with Dylan Easton, I think it's more a case of, as you said, Blair, defenders aren't worried about Jack Hamilton. No. They're worried about Dylan Easton. And they are only worried about Dylan Easton. And it makes it so much harder for him to try and do anything. And I think there's a broader reliance. I think too often recently, the attacking strategy has been give the ball to Dylan. Or worse than that, where is Dylan? And then just killing time until he turns up. But it's I agree with what the last thing you said as well. Like, he can't start on Saturday. And that's a terrible place to be when you're just being like, this guy cannot play in this next game because it's making us worse. Especially when we don't seem to have any apparent replacement for him. But that's the point we're at, where you're just going, I'd almost rather just anybody played than he played based on what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, again, with it, it's one where I'd sort of speculate before the game about maybe potentially even trying Winter up top. And I think now we're in that position where it's exploring options and we've got to look down that route. And I get that there is, for me, with the way that Rovers play, I mean, it's pretty self-evident based on the last 2 games. You could see where the strength was and when we were playing and how we were doing it. It wasn't by long balls and 50-50 chances against defenders, particularly against Aaron Muirhead and Dan O'Brien. Like, it's when we were playing it short, we were getting it into feet. Players were looking lively when you bring on the likes of Chin, maybe Gibson as well. And I know that, look, not everything came off, and Dougie Emery alludes to that in he mentioning a World Cup Willie pass from Richard Chin in his interview. There's a niche reference there, but it just seems so much more pondersome to play sort of directly, and again, that's not going to help anyone. But yeah, with Jack Hamilton, I do feel just for the guy and just on a sort of individual level, just because it is like, it just feels like it's him against the world at the moment, and there's no other real way to put it. I suspect it can be pretty brutal on that side of it. Do feel for the lad, but at the same time, you're, as a footballer, you're always going to get judged on that side, and centre forwards are probably the worst of the bunch in terms of that there's those attributes and they're judged based on their goal tallies and the contribution. And I don't think you can shy away from 3 goals and 22 is it that's in the league. as Blair said, I really do hope that if we took him out and that he can come back in at some point later on and maybe just clear his head and being able to move forward again. I don't know where he'll be at all in the current situation, but I think it's just in terms of the collective for the team, it's just, for me, it seems like where we need to be at the moment. We're barely at the half-hour mark in this game, and we're 45 minutes into this debrief and therapy session, lads.
Sorry, Robbie, before we move on, I want to try and ask you, what have you made of Andy Winter so far?
Andy Winter,
bringing him in.
I've noticed that he seems to be getting a bit of questioning about like what he's bringing to the table, because a lot of people thinking that he's Sandy, that sits behind me in particular, is not, sorry to name call you out, Sandy, but it's I think that with it you can see why people are automatically comparing him to Callum Smith and what he brings to the table. I don't think we've seen too much from him. He had that sort of half chance against Queen of the South, which was a shot that got fired wide, but yesterday he was very quiet. I'd be keen to see what he can bring as a 9, but I think that's also part of the wider circumstances with the team. What about for you, Duncan? What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think the Callum Smith things that occurred to me as well. Like, it feels like we've kind of brought him in and then just asked him to be just like a generic attacking player.
Yeah. Like,
could you just go and be a forward, please? And just play off the left? And it seems like, I don't know, I find it very odd. I feel like he's not been given a fair chance, almost. Like, I don't understand. We went into the window knowing we needed a striker. And we signed a striker, like day one of the window. And I just played him on the left wing.
And the right wing.
Because before he can play as a 9, he did it with Arbroath last season. So,
and it's not like the bar for replacing the number 9 right now is we're not setting limbo world records here. Like, that doesn't make sense. Limbo's a very low bar. You get what I mean? High jump records. Like, I didn't really, and it seems like the one thing we do have is loads of wide players. They could have played anybody on the left-hand side. We've brought him in, and I know that he obviously has played there, but it doesn't look like it's particularly, like, he doesn't have a standout skill where you go, oh shit, that's why he's out there. And I think particularly yesterday, he was kind of stationed out on the left-hand side, but very deliberately. It was clearly the strategy rather than something he was doing. He was coming inside to then create space for Ewan Wilson.
Yeah,
but this doesn't seem to suit him or Ewan Wilson. I didn't really get it. And then to jump to the second half, start the second half, it looked like he was up front and Richard Chin was in the left wing. And then we scored a goal and swapped them. And I thought, what's
exactly what I was going to say. It made no sense.
I didn't get it. And it wasn't like the goal came from that or vice versa. I just didn't really... I don't know. And it's to the point where we're saying, like, oh, I don't think Jack Hamlin could start on Saturday. Andy Winter's the only fit striker at the club. And I'm not sure he's going to start up front. Like, that's puzzled me more than anything else.
I just don't know if he maybe signed him not thinking he's a striker, thinking he's a forward player who can play as a striker, but that's not his strength. And he's identified the fact that he's got no width on the left. So Easton kind of plays out on the left, but keeps cutting inside and naturally kind of brings in, doesn't necessarily provide width on the left. And if Emery's wanting to play, I'm just looking for answers here, but if Emery's wanting to play with wingers and genuinely get those crosses into the box and stuff, that maybe that's what he signed them for. But if that's the case, is that no Gibson? I don't know. Or Mullin even on the left. I agree with you completely, because I'm exactly the same boat. You've signed a boy to play in a position where we have options, where he's not left-footed for a start. So it's not like he's going to cut the man down the left-hand side, hit the byline and cross it with his left foot naturally. So what's he out there for?
And again, you can see it.
Exactly the same as you. I don't think he's had a chance.
If Wilson was a real, like, bomb on, hit the byline, you could see it. Because then you think, well, actually, you start on the left, But then you come inside, you create the space, he hits the byline, you're in the box. You're there with Big Jack. You've got two men, but that's not been in evidence at all. So, it's puzzled me so far how we've used them, and it'll be interesting to see how we use them kind of going forward.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as I say, with the way that the team is at the moment, I would certainly expect that we would be looking to use him as a number 9. But as Blair mentions, the change that happened to switch him from being that we move him up top and then we switch him again. I'm sure there's reasons for it, but I would be interested to know about the sort of rationale behind it. But as fans, you're only going to find out so much information. Right, so let's talk a bit more about the first half, because we do actually need to get through that before we can get on to anything slightly
positive. Still 1-0,
isn't it? Yeah, we are. It almost did very closely become 2-0 though. A Josh Ray wonder save. Just, Blair, why do you think the Rovers, we concede the goal and then we just look horrifically disjointed at the back? All 6s and 7s, players not being able to get their clearances in, just misplaced passes, ball into midfield, getting picked out, and then you get that sort of, I think it's a header that came back off the post, was it? Or a shot that came back off the post, or tipped onto it by Josh Ray. Talk us through the save. Just in where we were at that point.
I mean, that's exactly the frustration. It was like if the sort of miss kick for Ray before the first goal didn't create panic, the goal certainly did. We lost all composure, we lost all shape. We stopped doing what, I mean, like I say, we weren't necessarily, bodying the game and completely in control, but we looked the better of the two sides for me until the first goal. Certainly up until maybe 3 or 4 minutes before the first goal. And after the first goal, we looked second to everything. And it's the lack of composure that's probably the most alarming bit, because it's totally avoidable. The goal for me again comes out of nothing, but that chance, how many chances do we need to kind of deal with the ball and kind of get rid? Josh Ray makes a good save, but it should never be getting to that. It's probably worth saying at this point, it's easily the worst performance we've had from the two centre halves, who have been brilliant all season, or not all season, since Fordyce dropped out and O'Connor came in. They've been really good together. They've been starting to form a really good partnership and starting to look really, really solid. And it didn't work. I don't know what it was. I don't know what the difference was on Saturday, but I don't think either of them had a particularly good game. And like I say, it just all for me came down to, I think, composure. I keep saying the same word over and over again, but it was like rabbits in the headlights at times, just headless chickens, not putting our foot on the ball, not dealing with crosses, and panicking. And when that ball hits the post and comes back out, felt like at the time I said it to one of my mates, I was like, this is like the derby all over again. It's like we felt all right, we weren't quite in it, we go a goal down, second one is coming, and it did.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I really have down in my notes here, Duncan, worth probably mentioning, is Paul McMullen flashes a ball across the face of goal, but then it goes 2-0 with Dapple Mabudi. Again, do you think that bits like that from McMullen are sort of, you mentioned before that you've got maybe a bit more of a sort of case for the defence in terms of him, but then go through the second goal as well, and just your sort of reaction to seeing that going in, and again picking out any sort of blame in terms of that. A bit unfortunate maybe for Josh Ray that the ball goes right into the path of Mabudi, who does well with a good header.
Yeah. I mean, on the McMullen of it, yeah, as I say, he's not doing particularly well at the moment, but I do think that some of that is a reflection of the fact that A, there's nobody else scoring goals, and B, the guy who he would ideally be creating chances for isn't scoring goals. So, like, it's a bit of a kind of hiding to nothing. Absolutely, he could be doing a lot better. I mean, that chance is fine. I don't think he particularly does anything wrong. He zips the ball across the goal. Jack Hamilton's 8 yards back. And I think you could say, Jack Hamilton, you need to be 8 yards further forward. Or you could say, Paul McMullen, you need to be cutting that ball back. You know, pick your fighter, really. It was a little ball over the top from J. Rowe, I think. And we did get a wee bit of kind of joy from that a couple of times yesterday. But as you have just said, the sort of fragility at the other end just... I never get that feeling from Arbroath, really. I know we scored 2 goals in the second half, but they weren't making silly mistakes. They weren't taking chances in the same way that we seem to be doing. And it's another one, like we've already talked about, where you've got guys out of position. Now, this one I think is a little bit more forgivable in the sense that it comes off a breakdown from a set piece. So, like, Paul Hanlon is out of position because he's in the opposition's box. But as things move around, like, Ewan Wilson goes across to cover it, basically sort of centre half, and then Andy Winter comes in to be the left back, and then Scott Brown is there, and it's just a bit like everybody's trying to do it. And actually, though, I think you kind of deal with it well enough, almost. If you're that badly out of position and you force the opposition wide in the box and they're going to have to take a bit of a swing at it, 9 times out of 10, that's probably enough. And even at that, Josh Ray makes a really, really good save. And at this point, I imagine, I don't know if either of you two will, some people would disagree with this. I think you just have to give full credit to Daphne Mabudi.
Yeah.
And I know I've seen at least one bit of criticism for J. Rowe saying, you know, Mabudi reacts quicker than he does. But I don't know. I think if the fullback there, as the keeper goes across, is alert enough to be almost like covering for that, and that would be unbelievable defending.
Yeah.
Like, you would have to be really like on your knees praising that level of anticipation from your defender, whereas your striker's just gambling. And Mabudi, and it's a really good bit of technique as well. I mean, that's his first goal of the season, which, I mean, I suppose, based on what we've seen from Daphne Mabudi previously, makes perfect sense. Based on the evidence of that one goal, you think that's a really good finish. I'm surprised he's not had more. Granted, he's been playing wide a lot of the time. But, I'm not, like, desperate to go and criticise a load of individuals for that, but it did just feel like a result of the kind of systemic failures in that first half.
Yeah. Again, to reiterate what you said, I think that Mabudi deserves a lot of praise. It's that cliche about the sort of striker's instinct of following in and chances will come for you. He does really, really well just to follow it up and make sure that he's there because, I mean, it's one of those where you can possibly say, like, 9 times out of 10 the ball goes out for a corner because Josh Ray just palms it away and it goes behind. But he's just followed it so well, and the technique to get it back across goal deserves a fair amount of credit as far as I'm concerned. And that led us into half-time. Dougie Emery looking suitably and unimpressed with some of the shouts that were made from the sort of home support. And then we get the announcement for the half-time subs with Richard Chin coming on to replace Jack Hamilton and Josh Mullin to replace Paul McMullen. Second game in a row at home, Blair, that we've been 2-0 down at half-time, which you just sort of really just expecting the changes, and teacups thrown about the dressing room at that point, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I'm under no illusions at all that Dougie Emery will not be happy with the fans booing him off at half-time, but I imagine he'll be equally as annoyed as the fans were at the performance in the first half. He was kind of jumping a bit like a madman a couple of points. Clearly not happy with what he's seen. But for me, and I maintain I'm still very much on the Doogie bus. That's not changed at all for me. But I think he deserves a fair bit of criticism himself. Actually, as I said already, the starting 11 for me. Maybe it is, kind of hindsight's of 2020. But I did feel it before the game. It was just feeling more of the same. Like, to have had the performance on Tuesday and then do that. Effectively the same shape 11, kind of, certainly the forward end of it felt quite kind of daft. But credit where it's due, much like the derby, and I did say after the derby that the thing that kind of filled me with confidence is he didn't have the changes to make in the derby, being forced into 2 substitutions before half time that he didn't want to make, and yet he could still go in at half time and have a conversation with a group of boys and bring them out and make a change in terms of the kind of the performance. So to have the ability to make the changes and have that certainly filled us with a bit of hope. Did I think at half time that any change in the world was going to get us back to 2-2 with 10 minutes left? I'll be honest, no. We're no scoring goals is the kind of conversation that everybody was having at half time, and quite rightly so. Like, we haven't been. But the changes he makes, they're not necessarily, like for like, as in, he's not got a striker on the bench that he brings on. He does move Winter in to the 9. But for me, the whole pattern of play in that first 10 minutes or so of the second half, certainly leading up to the Scott Brown goal, and the bits before it as well, it was like night and day. Just the movement and the space creation and the kind of the bravery on the ball and the willingness to kind of run and to do things with it. It felt like night and day from the first half. And so when the first goal does go in, which I know we'll get to in a second, it did feel like, right, here we go. It didn't feel like, oh, that was nice. Because to me, the derby did feel a bit like that. We scored the goal in the derby from a penalty, and it wasn't like, we're going, right, here we go, we're definitely back in this now. You were there and thereabouts, but it did feel like we were back in it when that Scott Brown chance goes in. So he deserves credit for making the change. The jury's still out on whether that carries through on Saturday or not. That's my overriding concern at this point.
I mean, I think he's got more than enough experience in terms of the dugout to be able to do it. And I think that with his comments in the post-match, I don't think those are going to be easily forgotten as to where he's at. I mean, even in the post-match, he references that there's 3 players coming in, and I'm like, 3 bits of business in the transfer window. This is going to be exceptional. I'm looking forward to this week. And then, of course, he's talking about Sean Byrne, Ross Matthews and Lewis Vaughan coming back in, which, again, no wholesale changes to be able to have in your team. They're not going to be fully sort of match ready or in the sense of like match fitness, you would imagine, but certainly to have them available as options if you do need to change a game makes a huge difference. I
don't think any signing at this point comes in match fit either. I mean, Andy Winter's probably a good example of that. He's not played an awful lot of football, so he's probably not quite up to speed yet either. And any player that you're getting in at this point has been playing bit part, unless they're coming up a level. They've been playing bit part in whatever team they've been in. So yeah, it'd be good to have some boys back.
Well, I mean, the good example of that is Scott Robinson, unfortunately, later on. But we'll come back to that in a wee bit. Duncan, I mean, Blair referenced it as a chance for Scott Brown there, I think. Talk us through that one. Dylan Easton selflessly laying it off to Scott Brown in the heart of midfield, and then he just runs and talk us through it.
Yeah, it's it's an exceptional goal, first of all. Are we willing to discuss the handball that takes place in the middle of it?
Maybe.
As the ball comes down, Scott Brown charges between 2 Arbroath players and just pops his forearm out to
I actually hadn't noticed that until you said that. I'm just sitting watching the replay. I had not seen that.
It's a good touch. Anyway, as he moves on, I have to tell you, as he was shaping up for this, I was like, wrong choice. Like, wrong choice. He's got runners off him. The defence are at 6s and 7s. Chin's there, Mullin's there. Easton and Winter are both still there or thereabouts. It's like, oh, greedy Scott Brown's got to have his... Never mind, Scotty, on you go, pal. Good shot. But it's obviously it's exactly what it very much was. Kind of... we needed something like that, put it that way. I don't think we were going to play 15 passes and perfectly craft a really well-worked team goal. It was going to take something like that to really spark us back into life. But I agree with Blair. It did feel like we're right back in this game again. As much as the first half we were deservedly 2-0 down, we'd made those changes, we looked better, suddenly then there's a goal, and it did feel like a very different game. And actually, I think it was a very different game, really, for the next kind of 20 minutes or so. I don't think this was a sort of false dawn, really. Ultimately, the final result in the game would say otherwise. But, we played well in this portion of the game, I would argue.
So how much do you think of that turnaround was down to the Rovers playing well, but also as well, maybe is there a degree that maybe Arbroath became a bit more conservative, Duncan?
Yes, I think so. I think partly that's a kind of natural response. So David Gold in his post-match interview says as much. He says it's 2-0 at half-time. He says, we know what their job is. They're going to come out and try and score a goal, and they're going to throw everything at us. And we know what our job is. It's to stop them. So naturally, I think that is a little bit more conservative. I think it's also trickier to work out how to defend when you've just got this kind of forward unit of Richard Chin, Josh Mullin, Andy Winter, Dylan Easton, Scott Brown, who, I mean, even within themselves, don't necessarily have perfectly defined positions. To kind of echo a point from earlier, even just as a mission statement, you're defending against Jack Hamilton versus you're defending against all of these guys, and we didn't really quite know who's where and when. Like, even just from like a fear factor, comfort point of view, it doesn't even need to be true. But if in your head you're like, this guy's out of form, not doing too well, I'm Tam O'Brien, like, I've got this. And then all of a sudden you're like, who's this guy who's running at my feet and all this kind of stuff? And I think if you're Arbroath, absolutely your strategy at the start of that second half is, let's see this out at 2-0. And if it goes to 2-1, we'll maybe see what we have to do with this. And it did go 2-1 pretty quickly. And I think you could see then that almost judging the energy in the game, I think at that point they were, I mean, this is a bit far, but maybe as the second goes in, I think they're thinking, listen, a point's not a bad result here. Listen, they were never going to give up by any means at all, and obviously they would deserve to win the game. But, I mean, the Rovers were in the ascendancy at that point, and partly it's a natural response to being 2-0. It is also... that doesn't happen if he doesn't make the halftime subs. Like, put it that way.
Definitely not.
Whether that is as a result of what those players are bringing to the table versus maybe what you weren't getting from the guys who went off, I don't know. But, I mean, I have a theory.
Well, Blair, we'll turn to you now.
Yeah.
You love Josh Mullin, and it was an absolutely magnificent goal fed through.
It was.
Through ball from Dylan Easton. Just talk us through it.
So it was just brilliant. It was the speed that we kind of, I spoke about it at the beginning, and I kind of reference this goal as a proper juxtaposition against Dylan Easton in the first half. Too many touches, too slow. He's looking up, who's in front of him, where's the run coming from, who's he putting in. But I mean, even that Scott Brown goal, you've got Chin and Mullin both run, and you actually see, I think it is Tam O'Brien, I'm not really sure, maybe it's Muirhead, but one of the two of them loses their feet and slips. So there's nobody coming out from the back four to shut him down, and it's because of that movement. But just some lovely kind of light touches. It really reminded me of the goal that, and I've been trying to rack my brain, I think it's the one that Chin scored against Arbroath.
Mm-hmm.
Really similar kind of breakdown of play, and Easton just playing that little kind of shunty pass, like a little bit of spin on it and just a little bit to take the pace off it on the pitch, into the path. But Josh Mullin, actually, for me, it's a wee bit harder than it looks, because he's almost got to skip out the road of it, because it's coming right from behind him. It's almost right through him. Again, I don't want to just lambast Jack Hamilton, but it feels like if he'd played that same pass to Jack Hamilton, it'd hit his heels and bounce back the way. Do you know what I mean? Just that kind of lack of confidence or kind of swagger when you're playing. But Josh Mullin takes it in his feet and just sweeps it past the keeper. A really tidy finish. And yeah, like I said earlier, after that first goal went on, you were like, right, here we go, game on. Actually, if you told me at half time we'd be 2-2 at this point in the game, I'd have laughed at you. There's not a chance I thought that was going to happen. But at that point, did I think one team was going to go on and win that game? Yeah, and I thought it was us. To be totally honest with you, I genuinely thought at that point, right, here we go. He's going to properly turn us around. We're going to win this game, and we're all going to look at it and we're going to go, right, there's your blueprint for Saturday. You know or Sunday it is next week. You know exactly what you've got to do. Go out there and kind of make a season for us now. Like, if somebody comes in, great, but if not, you've got a kind of a blueprint for something that can work for us. Kind of fed back a little bit to when Jack Hamilton, I feel like I'm just picking on him now, but when he wasn't playing at the beginning of the season, the game at Ayr and the game at Partick, where we were playing with kind of no strikers, but it was kind of Easton and McMullen up top, and just that constant movement and the kind of pace that we were playing with up top, it kind of felt back to that. But I do agree with Duncan, though. So I still think it was really weird to play Winter in the 9 until we scored and then make the change. I still don't quite understand that, because for me, Winter fell out the game at that point. I know he ends up getting subbed for, I think it was Gibson that came on for him. But yeah, lovely goal, lovely bit of play, quick feet, and actually just what a difference when Dylan Easton's tails up and he's got runners and he's playing those kind of passes. We know he can do it. But yeah, just gutted that after that. Yeah, just didn't happen.
Duncan, to come back to you, do you think that's sort of an effective representation, that sort of spell at the start of the first half? We get our 2 goals and we're playing some decent football. We're maybe not creating chance after chance. I don't think it would be fair to sort of go in and say we were absolutely peppering the goal and Arbroath were completely on the back foot, but we get our 2 goals and then the heads are up. Everyone in the South Stand is right behind the Rovers, funnily enough, at that point. And people are generally seen quite optimistic about it going forward. As Blair says, I was fully the same. You think one team's going to go on and win. Is that something that we really need to be seeing more of? That sort of the in terms of the style or the way, or is that just, do you think that's maybe unrealistic in terms of that we've got to be more flexible?
No, I think we've got to score more bloody goals. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Style, I couldn't care less at this point. Like, although, sorry, to be slightly more generous to your question, yeah, probably you're right. I think, like, ultimately it was that style that brought those 2 goals. It's that kind of breaking forward, not facing kind of backwards as a front line, and that's very different when your front line is 1 guy versus your front line is 4. Because there's people facing backwards in both of those goals, but there's 3 other guys who are heading forwards at the same time. And it's so this is maybe a slightly wider point, but I didn't come away from yesterday feeling distraught. I was annoyed. more than anything else, because it felt like maybe self-inflicted, maybe not quite that, but like there was enough of the good stuff there that you go, a tiny wee bit more of that, and you win that game. Like David Gold says it in his interview, an interview I really enjoyed, by the way. David Gold's a really good talker. It's worth listening to that kind of 5 minutes of what he says. But he's basically, if you ask anybody on the ground, and I'm assuming he encodes himself and his co-manager and that, he's at 2 each. Ask anyone on the ground who's going to win that game with Rovers. Like, that's what everybody expects. And obviously he's talking about it's his team, that it's their job to go and reverse that, and ultimately they do. But like, I didn't come away from that game going, oh my God, this team's terrible, and we didn't score enough goals, and we're not winning any games, and we're going to get relegated. I was like, if there's 5% more of the good stuff at the right times, we win that game.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. And that's because there's a difference between winning and losing. And obviously, the frustration is that for so much of it, the first half, a lot of it just wasn't there. And I suppose it's a case of, well, you've just got to make sure that next game and the game after that and the game after that, that you're amplifying the good stuff and taking away the not so good stuff. But I mean, it's difficult because even the goals that we are scoring, they feel very disparate. Other than Dylan Easton penalties, they're quite like, this one thing worked really well this one time, rather than this is a repeatable lesson. This is a thing, actually, that's worked well. Let's see more of that. It's just like, and it's listen, again, it's obvious. It's really, really trite to say it, but if we could find a new route to goal that gave us 5 goals between now and the end of the season, we'd be doing so much better. And whether that's one player comes in and scores 5 goals, or it's we've not enough time for digressions, but like Ewan Wilson's long throws, I don't love him, but like that as an example, like if, for example, a week ago Ewan Wilson had started doing long throws and they were really good and started getting us goals, but that makes such a difference. That's how far away we are from being a playoff team, by the way. It's a handful of goals at the right time. And that's the frustrating thing. I'm not watching this Rovers side going, this needs to be ripped up and started again.
Yeah, totally.
I'm going, give me a guy who's going to score 8 goals for somewhere.
Well, it's the right time of the year for it. If you fancy a hero to come in and do that, but the question is who, and of course that's the difficulty, as to where that actually comes from. Blair, we do make a couple of changes. 78th minute, we bring on Lewis Gibson for Andy Winter, and Paul Neeson comes on for Scott Brown. But also Rovers seem to, prior to even that, they seem to have reverted more to type in terms of being more direct. But of course, Aaron Muirhead and Tam O'Brien just mopping everything up, looking comfy at the back. Was that a source of frustration for you, given how well we played at the start of the second half? And then just take us into the sort of final goal for Arbroath, the one that seals the deal with, as I mentioned them earlier on, Scott Robinson getting off the mark for Arbroath, having signed from Hamilton.
I mean, the first part of your question, I think it's a bit like when you asked Duncan earlier about the Arbroath kind of sitting in and being more kind of... maybe negative's too far, but more conservative, more defensive. It's a natural thing that happens when you're 2-0 up. When you come back for 2-0 down to 2-2 and you're really chasing a game, I think it is a bit more natural that it's a bit like when you're 2-1 down and like there's 10 minutes left. It's just, let's get the ball forward. I have to say at that point, it didn't really feel like It's a horrible place to be as a Red Rovers fan, but it didn't really feel like we're a goal conceded coming. Like, it just didn't. It felt to me like Arbroath were clinging on, they were on the ropes, and we were kind of going for them. I mean, we've kind of skipped over it a wee bit, but there's a really, really, really good chance for J. Rowe. A beautiful corner for Josh Mullin, and if Easton wasn't hugging the goalie, and it hits his backside on the way down, and Easton's actually offside at that point. Like, we very, very nearly kind of got that third goal. But yeah, the getting more direct, it started to feel a bit silly when you're knocking balls long to Chin and Gibson against Arbroath. Like, you've just, nah, it's not going to work. But I don't think that's tactical. I don't think that's Dougie Emery saying, play it long. I think that's just players kind of not panicking, but kind of feeling like they need to deal with it. And for me, that's exactly where the goal comes from. Again, a player who I've sung his praises for weeks, but Darragh O'Connor absolutely sells the jersey just like a collie dug in the park, bombing in to try and win that header, just desperate to get the ball forward.
That's my thumbnail for the Twitter, Blair. Thank you very much.
It's true, though. It's just like, it was in hindsight, and it is one of those horrible things where if nothing came of it, you go, great, attacking header, like, he's desperate to get the ball forward, really, really good. But when you then get caught on the break, and it is basically played directly through the middle of your two centre halves to their forward who's running through one-on-one with the keeper, like, in that moment, you're watching the run of play, the ball goes through. I was like, he must be about 10 yards offside. How is he so far through? It makes no sense. But it is just, O'Connor goes kind of bombing through, kind of chases his own header to an extent. And Doherty does exactly the same kind of thing. The two of them kind of stay forward, nice wee touch inside, and just one pass. Hanlon's in no man's land. J. Rowe is not covering. He's kind of miles off of it. I thought it was a wee bit harsh, actually, when Emery talks about the Chin pass. I'm like, if you can't take a risk, like, in that part of the park, like, that's what he's there for.
That's exactly what I was going to say. He's trying to play a World Cup Willie pass. He's World Cup Willie. That's what he's on the park to be. Like, that's if Darragh O'Connor is trying to play World Cup Willie passes, then I think you can take issue with it. But, like, that's what Richard Chin's there to do. And I think it's a thing I say about Dylan Easton all the time. Like, you have to forgive him when he tries that stuff and it doesn't work. Because when he tries that stuff and it does work, that's the best football you'll see all afternoon. Yeah. My issue with Darragh O'Connor on this is the header that he comes and wins, I think, is perfect. Absolutely great. He comes charging out, wins a header, fine. My problem is that he stands and watches it.
Yeah.
Like, he's charged 20 yards off, basically out of his defensive line, and then doesn't go back again. And Rowe is already up at that point, and Hanlon isn't. And that then basically creates the situation. And I don't think it's fair almost on Paul Hanlon to say, you should have gone with it. Like, you should have also raced up to the halfway line. It's just, O'Connor needs to basically just header that and then be immediately back again. And it's
header the ball not directly to the player.
to one of their players, aye.
Yeah.
This is like, it's so galling, this goal on a couple of fronts. None of which, by the way, are anything to do with the way that Arbroath have scored it. It's a really good ball through. It's a really good finish. Of course, Scott Robinson scores all the time. But, like, I don't know, is it fair to call it a sucker punch? I'm not sure. That's how it felt. And it felt so straightforward as well. Like, so... Like, it's one of these where it's like, all the work you've done all afternoon, you've just thrown it away.
Because I'm trying to think, looking back, whether Arbroath... I mean... This isn't being disrespectful to them because it did so much in terms of, like, being able to keep us at bay, and they I don't think we really created any chances that you were like, oh, that was like a goal. No, like Paul McMullen in the last derby, like that 1-on-1 where you think, right, needs to be scoring that. For me, Arbroath really never had any like shots, and I don't think that's not being critical given the complexity and the position of the game at that point, because they were on the back foot and
they're still time wasting.
Yeah, they also knew as well, by the same token, that we're going to be quite reckless going forward, in the sense that if we're the ones that they could hear the reaction at half time, our fans are the ones that are going to be wanting it to go to 3-2, because then it's a big, oh, well, we've beaten Arbroath, they're really far ahead of us in the league. So there is that kind of psychology of the game and the state of play at that point, that they've been able to do that. And credit to them, because they are a good team.
Absolutely.
I don't think anyone's sort of shied away from that. But yeah, it was,
I think you're right.
I would say it's a sucker punch. I would say so.
Unless I've forgotten it, I don't think they had a sort of meaningful chance between their second and third goals. But for a portion of that, they were 2-0 up. And for a portion of it, they were 2-1 up. And again, they're playing a team who, we all know, don't score very many goals. So it's a perfectly legitimate tactic to just, well, let's see if we can just see this game out. But I don't think we reacted very well to this goal. I mean, it was a question you asked Blair a second ago, Robbie, but I thought between basically half time and this goal going in, we were pretty good. And the subs, the Niso and Gibson coming on is only 2 or 3 minutes before this. But after this, I was quite disappointed. I felt like we were too panicky, too... it wasn't to anywhere near the same degree, but there were echoes of the kind of bad Murray ball attempts where like he'd put a load of players on and then all you did was just launch it out the back line to ill effect. It was a bit like that. It just, and maybe it's just belief as well, and you've got that momentum and you've got that like, oh, we are going to go on and win this game 3-2, and then as soon as that third goal goes in against you, it kind of falls away. But yes, again, as I say, galling on a few fronts, and it would be like, we've known we've needed a striker for a really long time, and Arbroath apparently found out that Scott Robinson was available on Friday, and he scored against us on Saturday. Now, I'm not for a second saying, oh, he should have signed for us instead. Like, I mean, the fact he's got part-time, presumably it's someone he's been thinking about for a long time. But that doesn't make it any less frustrating.
I did like your initial comment when he did sign for Arbroath that he was the most Raith Rovers player not to play for Raith Rovers. I think I'm putting Ian Russell into that category as well.
Yeah, Scott Robinson reeks of Raith Rovers. And I'm very annoyed that he'll, at this point, presumably never play for us. He signed an 18-month contract at Arbroath. But again, not to hammer home the same old point we've been making all evening, but that is 3 goals for Arbroath, 3 strikers scoring them. Raith Rovers have 2 strikers. Like, you know, it's not great, put it that way.
Yeah. I mean, to go back to an earlier point for you, again, Doug Emery comes out in his post-match interview and he does sort of mention the quality is there, but they need the will to win. And some of the boys were playing way below par. Some, as you rightfully mentioned earlier on, were coasting. We've got aspiration to the top 4, but the players need to show more. And he's full of praise for Arbroath's work ethic, and also highlighting that we've got Vaughan, Matthews and Byrne come back presumably within the next week. You rightfully point to sort of the centre forwards. Blair, do you think are the club sort of forced into potentially pushing any boat out for transfer options? I've been running the line for a good little while now that it's very easy to spend someone else's money when you're a fan and you're watching directors and talking about what they should or shouldn't do. They'll have the full picture of where we're at, but is their sort of hand maybe a bit forced into to potentially need to go for someone or look down that route?
Honestly, my understanding of it, no, that's not a kind of narrative that I think is fair. It was funny after Barry Robson was away, there was a conversation in the Macmillan Club one day about, and it passed me by completely because I don't read the programme, that Barry Robson kept saying that there was no money available and he couldn't bring anybody in. And Colin Smart had actually put a bit in the programme saying that there was money available and should the manager wish to bring somebody in. Because I think they were getting frustrated with this kind of narrative that there's no money to spend. I don't think it's that there's no money to spend. I just don't think there's anything in stock. Is the issue. I've said before, like, there's a lot of people have been critical of the Rovers in terms, and quite rightly so, in fairness, but critical in terms of their recruitment and stuff, and how, we went into last season effectively with Jamie Gullen coming back, and we were back to the same strike force we'd had 2 years before and whatever. And we're now in the stage where we're going, it'll be fine when Vaughan's back and it'll be fine when Vaughan's fit. Like, I've sung that song before. But there's no this queue of strikers kind of lined up, ready to kind of come in. Is something I keep saying, and I know that there are some available. We've talked already, and Duncan had mentioned already about his name's escaping me now. The boy for Barnsley,
Aidan Marsh.
Aidan Marsh. You'd mentioned about him in the summer, and like he was available. Like we could have went after him or whatever. And there's always, Robbie, I think you're right. It's easy to spend other people's money, but it's also easy to kind of play Championship manager and sign a player from anywhere in the world and just bring them into your squad. But when you've got to pay for digs and all the rest of it, there's and you don't know what the wage demands are for players that are looking to, bringing a player up from down south is not as simple as signing a boy who lives in Scotland and can commute every day from his current residence, coming to Starks Park every day of the week. I don't know. I don't know where they go next. I think that's the problem. And I keep saying this to folk. My biggest bugbear is the folk online who say we need to sign a striker. And when you push them on it and you go, right, okay, great, who would you recommend? It's not my job. It's not my job to pick a striker. It's my job to just demand stuff. Right, okay, but I don't feel like we're missing out on opportunities left, right, centre. I mean, to be fair, the Scott Robinson of it, maybe there is something in that. But like Duncan says, if he's going part-time, he's going part-time for a reason.
At that point in his career, you would think. Like, he would
there's got to be something behind that. He's I don't know, a personal trainer, or he'll be, he'll have some other gig going.
And the fact also as well, you're getting a move into a team that are very likely going to be in the playoffs does help in terms of saying, look, you're coming to that point in your career, you might want to be thinking about going part-time. We can help you in terms of any coaching. And then as well, you're getting an opportunity to have a crack at the playoffs later on if you're coming into the Championship from a Hamilton team that, with all due respect, the most mental club in Scottish football of the last 6 months. It's. And I know that other people look at the likes of Ollie Shaw. It might be that we ask the question, but his wage demands are too much. It's very.
I think for me, this is one of these things that's easier to look at in hindsight.
Yeah.
If Scott Robinson scores 15 goals between now and the summer, then all the fans of all the full-time clubs in the Championship are going, why did we not sign him in the window? He had to go part-time. We could have signed him in the window. If it turns out that that's the only goal he scores for Arbroath because he gets injured next week and he never plays for them again, then everybody's like, great, glad we didn't pick up him. And there's so much of it that you can't control. Where I do think there is legitimate criticism is just quite simply the number of bodies.
Yeah.
Arbroath have got 4 strikers. Like, we have 2 or 3, depending on how you want to define Andy Winter and how much reliability you want to place on Lewis Vaughan's shoulders. And up till this point, we've had Josh Jennings, who wasn't good enough. Honestly, might as well not have been there for all the positive contribution that he made. So
Arbroath don't bring on Nikolai Todorov yesterday.
Absolutely,
choose not to use him.
Honestly, Nikolai Todorov, if he'd played for us at the start of the season, would have played in every game.
Yeah,
probably would have been starting ahead of Jack Hamilton 10 games ago.
Yep.
There are a lot of guys in this division who, if you start with Adama Sidibe, who I think is the top scoring number 9 in the division. Josh Fowler's maybe ahead of him. I mean, Josh McPake is as well, but he's not a striker. Like, if you start with Adama Sidibe and then start going down the list, there's so many strikers where you're like, if you were a member of our squad, you would have played 20-odd games this season. And because for large parts, we've either had only Jack Hamilton, or we've had Jack Hamilton and a Bairn who's not good enough. And we're now at the point, as we seem to be quite often, where we're going, we need Lewis Vaughan to come back and be Lewis Vaughan, which he will be. He absolutely will be. If he can play, he'll be one of the top 3 strikers in the division, as he has been consistently over the last decade. Just is. Can you get those 15 games out of him? Because if you can, brilliant. Honestly, if you can, that problem's solved. But he still knows he can. And this is the eternal, factor that we've got with Vonnie. Like, if he could play 36 games this season and next season, the season after that, he'd be playing the Premiership. There's no question. But the thing is, even if he's back on Saturday and he's fit the rest of the season, we've still just got him and Jack Hamilton, who we know, unfortunately, has not been good enough. And there's not another team in the division who, as things stand at the moment, would say, we'll swap our strike force for a returning Lewis Vaughan, despite his quality, a returning Lewis Vaughan, a fit Jack Hamilton, and a left wing Andy Winter. Bottom of the league, Ross County wouldn't take that. And granted, they're about to lose Roden Hill. Queen's Park wouldn't take that. They've got Josh Fowler. Airdrie, I think, would probably rather take Ewan Henderson.
Yeah.
Pretty much on his own than swap you for that. Like, and this is the frustrating thing for me, because I think the rest of the team is fine. Like, it's if we fix that goal scoring bit, I think the rest of it, first of all, just looks better, and also is then good enough. The rest of the team, and I don't mean personnel wise, I mean in terms of like factors that they have. Like, the team is, quick enough, experienced enough, good enough defending, all this stuff. As a team, as a squad, we're at playoff level for all those. But exactly, tick all the boxes for being top 4 good enough for everything except scoring goals, where we're bottom 2. We might be last. I'm not sure. I've not checked. Probably bottom 2, I assume. And it's like that is the problem. And the rest of it, I think, is fine. And so, yes, you're right, Robbie. It's very easy to say, we need another striker in. And if that striker is someone who comes in and scores 15 goals, then it's problem solved. But I don't think it's overly harsh to say we should have had another striker. Whether that was Aidan Marsh, whatever. I think he's played in Truro. Could he possibly be further away than Starks Park?
I think he's only played about 5 games, scored 2 goals.
Exactly. And the thing is, was Aidan Marsh good enough to start every week in the Championship? Probably not. Was he better than Josh Gentles? Aye.
Oh, aye.
Now, he was also more expensive than Josh Gentles, so let's not get away for that. But, I don't know. So it's a real deal at Tesco. I know which one I'd rather have.
See, for me, the really frustrating thing about it is that when you look at all the other teams, because they are in that position where they've got the other established forwards, it feels like we've got a nice home for a forward sitting there, just waiting to be filled. But it's just, there's nobody else out there. It's like, I don't know if it's me, but it's like, just when you see the players and you look at some of the situations that you're in, and you think, oh, if only that could happen. Like Simon Murray's a good example. Now, the chances are that we would be very relatively far down the list for Simon Murray, but you wouldn't rule it out completely. Because if he did become available, again, there's about a year ago he was getting talked for a Scotland call-up. So this is looking at the very, very unfeasible situations probably to talk about. But you never know. These stranger things have happened. Where St Johnstone probably need a forward. So they'd likely be the ones if Sidibe does go, because he's linked with moves down to England. But then after that, you think, well, Partick Thistle, do they have the financial clout to do it? Maybe they push the boat out if they go there. Are they really wanting to do that given the circumstances where their goals are coming from? Usually coming in from the likes of Chalmers, Fitzpatrick. They've got Tony Watt scoring a good number of goals. They've got even Alex Samuels doing a turn for them in terms of up top contributing in. And then you go through the league.
Sorry, I'm going to jump in just for a second, Robbie. I'm not wanting to cut you off. I've literally just pulled up the top goal scorers list on Flash Scores, just because I was thinking, actually, I think Duncan's really hit on a point. It's numbers. Because you're saying Alex Samuel's chipping in. He's doing all right. He's got exactly the same number of goals as Jack Hamill.
He's not starting every week, though.
Aye.
But I know, but this is my point, right? But they've also got Tony Watt, who's got 5. And they've got Logan Chalmers, who's got a few. And then you go Jack Hamilton's got the same number of goals as Nikolai Todorov. He's got fewer goals than the boy Walker down at Ayr, Eamon Brophy at Morton. There's actually, when you go through the goal scoring list, there's a bit of a drop off with the strikers. It seems to be one of these seasons where the strikers aren't the ones scoring all the goals.
I think it's just modern football in general.
I looked at this yesterday. I think there's 4 or 5 in the division who are like 9s who start every week.
Yep.
And they've all got more goals than Jack Hamilton.
Yeah.
And then what you have, as you say, is almost like a second tier below that, where it's guys who are in and out the team, but who are scoring 3 or 4 goals. Yep. And that's really it. Jack Hamilton's in the second tier for numbers, but he's in the first tier for minutes.
Yeah.
That's true.
There's an alternative universe where Dylan Easton somehow miraculously hit the bar with a penalty on the first day, and then Jack Hamilton's had about 6 extra goals from penalties or something daft like that. We're all talking about what a season Jack Hamilton's having. But it's just... It's the circumstances that we're in.
Robbie, be honest, right? See, if you want to damn and indict me,
we wouldn't.
Maybe I'm on my own in this. Dylan Easton, I don't know, like tweaks a hamstring or whatever, goes off on Saturday or whatever game, and we get a penalty, and Jack Hamilton steps up to take it. How confident are you?
I am actually
honestly.
Let's not do this.
I'll tell you, I am actually confident because I think it does take a good penalty. Like from the sample that I've seen so far. Like, thinking back to even the playoffs, going back to the playoffs against Partick Thistle, sure, he took one of the penalties and it was a good penalty. I have seen him take, like...
But in this vein of form, it's that thing of, would I put money on Jack Hamilton burying a penalty at this point?
Well, you look at Mullin and the derby and the reaction to that.
Exactly.
Again, very different player, different sort of expectation in terms of where he's at. It's just... Yeah, look, I know that I mentioned the Simon Murray thing. Categorically not going to happen because he's getting subbed on by Stephen Presley. But you sort of, the point I was getting at there is just that there is that sort of, it just feels like we just need the right person to come in, and Duncan's kind of touched on it before, and in the sense of like, we've got so many other areas that we could have positives if we were just getting the goals in. Remarkably, I looked at the table, and again, we've played more games than almost all of them, other than Airdrie. But we've scored more goals than Morton, Airdrie, Queen's Park and County, albeit Queen's Park have played 3 less games than us on 20 goals. We've got Morton on 20 games with 20 goals. County as well, exactly the same. Or Morton on 21 games with 20 goals. County on 20 games, 20 goals. And Airdrie scored 18 in 22, which is the same number of games as us. But I think the point is that we've been boosted by that County result, and it's more about where we're going in terms of the direction and how we're playing. Because I think that there's enough to see in the 2 last games in particular with the players that came in. And there's a few of them that have came back, and again, it probably falls into that guilty category of sort of saying, they're just back from injury, etc., etc. But if you can get lads coming in that are these sort of pacey wide players and being able to change it up and mix up the style and being able to use them, how much of a difference does that make? Time will tell. Any final thoughts before we close off this episode, lads?
Only that I'd like Robbie Muirhead, please. He's where I'm nailing my colours to that mast.
Aye.
Same.
No more than that. I'm just putting that. I'm manifesting that. It's on my dream board. Just a big daft galoot with a mullet. One of those, please.
Yeah,
That's
that
Transfer
would,
Scotland. He'll maybe sort it out for us.
it depends if he's been blocked by Scott Burns yet. That was a funny bodying to watch if there ever was one.
It was funny.
Just everyone just. I made an analogy about that. Someone in the Terrace Discord said that they liked it, so it was that it's the equivalent of like pulling a ready meal out the microwave and calling yourself a cook. Like that's basically what he is. And I don't know why anyone takes that account seriously. It's just one guy, and he just grabs it from somewhere else, like Blair. Grabs it from somewhere else.
I actually weirdly got a random message off a boy that was on a stag do with kind of a mate of a mate. He's like, "Oh, this tweet just popped up in our group chat. Like it's a year on, and the Alex Grieve tweet comes back up again."
Maybe Alex Grieve will sign for
I take Alex Grieve at this point. He's a striker,
15 goals for us. Right, that'll end us off for this evening. We'll be back, of course, with a full preview for the Scottish Cup game against Aberdeen, which is taking place next Sunday. Until then, thank you for taking the time to listen and enjoying the therapy session with us and going through this, reliving this pain and difficulty. But we will be back for more because, we're no shite bags. Thanks again for listening. Bye for now.